What's up, everybody? This is the Act Man here, and today we're going to talk about emulation, piracy, and the preservation of video games. Yar har fiddle-dee-dee, being a pirate is alright with me. But these topics have garnered a lot of attention in the last few years, and there's a good reason why. Video games have been around for over 4 decades, but so many older classic titles are not easy or affordable to play. There are so many roadblocks that make it extremely difficult sometimes to just play an older title. And if we're not careful, we might lose a huge part of gaming culture, and what a tragedy that would be. That's why we need to preserve it somehow, some way. But unfortunately, copyright law across the world is totally fucked, and publishers will do everything in their power to fight emulation and preservation. And at the same time, they'll refuse to offer alternative ways to play and experience older media and to purchase their products. It really just comes down to, let me give you money. I want to give you money, Nintendo. What? Yes, today we're talking about copyright and the laws around video games and why it means we just can't have as much fun as we should. Recently, the video game industry unfortunately took a massive L. Do not post F in the chat, post L. Now don't be fooled, the game industry itself didn't do anything explicitly wrong.
That's a first.
Instead, it was the US Copyright Office. Yeah, get a load of this article from Games Radar. Publishers are absolutely terrified, quote, preserved video games would be used for recreational purposes, unquote. So the US Copyright Office has struck down a major effort for game preservation. People play video games for fun?
It's not true! That's impossible!
What? Since when? I don't believe this for a second. Recreational purposes? Yeah, the article really has a good headline. But if you actually look at the case that was filed, and by the way, we're not going to go through all of this. I don't think I'm qualified for that. And you can read this entire thing on your own if you want. But if you actually look in the case file, it'll say the ESA, which is the Entertainment Software Association, contended that there would be a significant risk that preserved video games would be used for recreational purposes. They further agreed that the expanded exemption would give preservation institutions too much discretion regarding how they provide remote users access to preserved works. They believe that removing the premises limitation would also adversely affect the existing market for older games. Basically, what this is saying, what this is all about, is there was a team of video game preservationists who wanted to make it easier for scholars, historians, researchers, and preservationists to check out digital games that run through emulators. And this would have made it much easier for these people to get access to older games to learn more about the medium of video games as a way to preserve and document this part of our culture. Now, I could be wrong, but I interpret what they're doing, companies like the Video Game History Foundation and the Software Preservation Network, what they're trying to do is basically establish the video game equivalent of the National Film Registry, which preserves movies for their historical, cultural, and aesthetic contributions, right? Basically, this movie is important, let's preserve it. So what the preservationists are trying to do is remove the single user limitation for preserved computer programs. And these changes to the DMCA, from my understanding, would have only affected games that are no longer being published or sold by these publishers. Basically, hey, if you're not gonna sell this anymore, can we at least preserve it in this small group of people so we can study these games without having to fucking find a Sega 32X? That's kind of the whole point, is that game publishers are in this super weird position where they don't want people pirating or emulating some of their older games, but they also don't offer a way to purchase them and make that easy in the modern day.
It's no longer possible to make Nintendo eShop purchases for Wii U and 3DS. What? But I'm willing to pay you. Here. Nope, no purchases allowed. Don't you have a Switch eShop? Yep. So you could make your legacy content available there at any time. That makes sense to me. Then do it. We currently have no plans to offer classic content in other ways and also don't pirate our games.
And there are so many technical problems and hurdles to overcome to play some of these older titles. All you need to do to know this is watch some of those old angry video game nerd videos and see how much trouble he has to go through hooking up all the systems, finding the games, making sure this console actually works. It's a huge pain in the ass, and that's why emulators are so popular. they remove a lot of the technical hurdles that get in the way of just playing these old games. Now, if you're wondering why this is important at all, well, take a look at this study from the Video Game History Foundation. Now, that sounds like an evil company, doesn't it? No doubt pawns of the deep state. But they did a study and found that 87% of classic video games are completely unavailable. They say, imagine if the only way to watch Titanic was to find a used VHS tape and maintain your own vintage equipment so that you could still watch it. And what if no library, not even the Library of Congress, could do any better? They could keep and digitize that VHS of Titanic, but you'd have to go all the way there to watch it. It sounds crazy, but that's the reality we live in with video games. A $180 billion industry, while the games and their history disappear. Just 13% of video game history is being represented in the current marketplace. In fact, no period of video game history even cracked 20% representation. And I think this is the crux of the issue, right? Video games do not follow the same rules as novels or movies. While so many books have been translated to audiobooks or available on Kindles, you can watch a film through multiple different streaming services, TV apps. All PlayStation and Xboxes function as a DVD and Blu-ray player. So whether you have the media digitally or physically, TV shows and movies are readily and easily available and accessible to the public in affordable ways. Video games are not. They are not like this, because video games are software that were designed for specific kinds of hardware. It's not enough to just copy and paste the code online and then, oh, suddenly the game is instantly playable. So what are people going to do in these instances where they want to play a classic video game? Are they gonna go to their local library or just pirate it and emulate it? They go on to say this is where libraries and archives should come in. Anyone should be able to easily explore, research, and play classic video games in the same way that they can read classic novels, listen to classic albums, and watch classic movies. But outdated copyright laws are preventing institutions like ours from doing our jobs. If you think about movies, like there's not a single person on this planet who was alive before movies were invented. But yet video games, compared to how old some people are in the government, to them, they still haven't experienced a video game before. So one has to wonder if their decision at the Copyright Office is just like some 75-year-old dude who's like,
what are they trying to do? They're trying to make Mario free for everyone? Well, that doesn't make sense. Shut it down.
I think it's pretty obvious that these movements and these organizations are not trying to affect or hurt the bottom line of game publishers. I think the intent is very clear. It's just that when no alternatives exist, people are going to have to go outside of the law to experience these games.
Stop right there, criminal scum!
There's so many things that affect this, right? When digital storefronts are shut down, like on Xbox 360, the 3DS, or Wii U, a lot of those games are shut down as well, or at least you can't purchase them anymore. Think about all these online-only games when the servers are shut down, and the publishers offer no alternative means to play those multiplayers or to allow groups of fans to run their own private servers completely unmonetized. This desire for game preservation is so strong, right? Remember Nostalrius, that old WoW Classic server? That is a great example of if you don't provide the product for your audience, they'll find a workaround. And I think it's clear when WoW Classic came out and Burning Crusade Classic, people didn't have a problem paying for it again. Now, why is emulation important? Well, let's just say that me and another YouTube buddy of mine wanted to throw down on some Star Wars Episode 3 duels.
I'm about to do what Obi-Wan should have done years ago.
Ooh, kill me?
Yeah,
what the fuck?
kill you.
What was that line, bro?
But in order to do that, one of us would have to fly to each other's house, set up an original Xbox, and that would be kind of a pain in the ass. We've already purchased this game. It's not being sold at retail anymore. It's not available anywhere else. To my knowledge, the only way is backwards compatibility. So if we wanted to duel in the Episode 3 game, we could emulate it, play it online, and avoid all of those hurdles. The end result being 2 videos revisiting this old game and talking about how awesome it is, showing how fun it was, and saying, hey, this was a really great game. The problem, I think, with video game publishers is they think, from their perspective, if people are emulating and playing our older games, they're not buying our new ones. No, money me now. The US Copyright Office has declined to grant a new exemption to the DMCA that would allow libraries and archives to offer remote digital access to out-of-market video games for verified researchers. Keyword, verified researchers, as in trusted people. The Software Preservation Network argues that due to equipment, technological, and supply limitations, the lack of digital availability of out-of-market games is a massive hindrance to researchers and academics who may not live near a library that has a physical copy of a needed game available to check out. Again, lots of old game cartridges and consoles degrade over time. Some of my old copies of Blue version just don't work anymore because the internal battery corroded or whatever. It's like, hey, if you're not gonna sell this product anymore, can we, like, put it in a library or something? No. The librarians might play it for recreational purposes. That's like the gist of it. So what are my options? Do I spend $200 on eBay to purchase a copy of Blue version where none of that money goes to Nintendo and I play it on my old Game Boy Color? Well, oh shit, my Game Boy Color's broken too. Guess I have to buy another one. Do I go through all of that or just find a way to emulate it? Groups such as the ESA opposed the amendment, claiming it would harm companies' ability to make money off of retro games. Retro games that they are not selling. One ESA lawyer argued that there was no combination of limitations ESA members would support to provide remote access. No, you can't emulate. Nobody can emulate. Not even trusted researchers. In the end, the Copyright Office sided with the ESA, stating that the SPN did not show that removing the single-user limitation for preserved computer programs are likely to be non-infringing. Now, the thing that sucks about this is that apparently they only get to make their case once every 3 years. So by the time 2027 comes around, maybe the Copyright Office will swing the other way on this. Now, this is why it's so cool to see Nintendo slowly but surely offer ways to emulate their games through like the Switch Online emulators for NES, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and N64. And while these are great strides, it's not enough. Many companies and organizations are doing their best to fight for video game preservation, like limited run games, allowing me to play Jedi Academy on the Switch. While there are certainly people who pirate games solely because they don't want to spend money on them, it shouldn't be the case where piracy is doing more for game preservation than the companies do. In what world does it make sense that Nintendo would release all of these digital games for Wii, Wii U, the eShop, 3DS store, shut the stores down, and then not make those games available to play and purchase on their next console? In what world does that make sense? It's like they clearly have the capacity and resources to do a lot more, but they just don't. If companies want consumers to feel comfortable and safe investing in a digital library, then wouldn't it make sense for both parties if, say, the Nintendo Switch Online account would transfer all of that person's digital purchases to whatever the next console is? I mean, think of how long it's been since they came out with Blu-ray players and DVD players. It's not like when Blu-ray players came along, all your old DVDs were obsolete. And look at how many people got excited hearing that Banjo-Tooie would be available on Switch. Doesn't that say something, Nintendo? That there's like a hunger for legacy media? I mean, shit, Banjo-Tooie has already been ported to Xbox One like 9 years ago on Rare Replay. And I think Microsoft has been making some incredible strides with preservation. And compilations like Rare Replay are incredible for this exact reason. It takes all of these old classic games and puts them into one that's relatively cheap, and all of it just works.
All of this just works. It's not, I'm not kidding.
The problem is that as older consoles and hardware starts to become obsolete or phased out of people's living rooms, so too do the games on those consoles if they're never ported to new hardware. This is why I think backwards compatibility is also super important. For people like me who still prefer to buy things physically, I thought it was so fucking cool the day I got a Series X and I popped in a copy of Fusion Frenzy, and it worked! But not every original Xbox game is backwards compatible. But I wish they were. There's obviously no easy or straightforward solution to the problem of game preservation, but striking down small steps towards that goal, like this change to the DMCA, that's disheartening for sure. Nintendo is one of the worst companies when it comes to emulation, and even just saying that word, I gotta watch my back, you know? They're so ruthless in taking down emulation software. It's like the job of preserving Nintendo's legacy and their games has fallen on this group of rebels who might be breaking the law, but we know they're doing something noble. These people aren't doing it because they hate Nintendo. It's the opposite. They love Nintendo. Most of them do. Now, when it comes to shutting down digital stores, I mean, it makes sense. Servers cost money, and if people aren't paying for games on the Xbox 360 marketplace, why keep it up? So what's the solution? Well, I think companies should plan to port every game and DLC to new digital storefronts. Like, we should start planning that in advance. I think this is one of the main reasons Steam is the most popular digital storefront, is because it's been around since 2004, and all the games people have purchased since then, they still have them. Steam's not going anywhere, and if it does, nuclear war is about to break out. But that's what companies like Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft should start doing, thinking about, and implementing. At the same time, though, for some games, there's just not enough demand. In a perfect world, the next Nintendo console would have every Nintendo game that's ever been published available to purchase and play. But that's not exactly realistic to expect any company to do. And I suppose for some games that wouldn't be profitable to put in the effort, so it's not entirely reasonable to expect Nintendo to do that, but that's exactly where game preservationists come in, because those guys can fill in the gaps. Where Nintendo, Sony, or Microsoft don't want to bother with a certain game or title, or don't think they're gonna make a profit on it, let these guys preserve it at least. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Now, it's important to play devil's advocate and understand why publishers and corporations keep opposing video game preservation. Copyright can be a slippery slope, and any concession they give could open the floodgates and allow tons of bad actors to exploit whatever this new system would become. But as long as companies like Ubisoft are insisting that we should get used to not owning our games, we need to continue this fight, and we need to keep talking about it. We need to keep talking about things like the Stop Killing Games initiative, because like with the Battlefront 2 loot box fiasco, the only way things are going to change is if we make our voices heard. I think video game preservation and emulation is treated by publishers and companies like Nintendo as some kind of massive threat to their bottom line, but they don't do enough to offer these games in a way that's accessible and affordable for the average Joe. And what groups like the Video Game History Foundation are advocating and asking for, I think would have little to no effect on publishers' bottom line. The fight for video game preservation is a fight about preserving video game culture, nerd culture. And it's not like this would have made piracy legal, but ultimately this is a huge blow to game preservation, and it's disheartening to see. But I thought I'd do my best to at least raise awareness of it, keep people informed, despite how nerdy it is to say all this, we don't want to lose this culture. Imagine a world where you wouldn't have to pay like $800 for a Philips CDI to play those old Zelda games, But yeah, it sucks that this is the way things went down. Hopefully in 3 years, we'll be singing a different tune. But what do you think? Are you a pirate? Is Nintendo trying to sue you for downloading an emulator? Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to The Act Man for more awesome content. Alright everyone, that's all I got for today. This is The Act Man signing out. Peace!